Next step in our data handling journey is to create a pivot table. Taking a look at the data that we imported in the previous segment, we can see we have 1,185 rows of data. And what we're interested in is pivoting on this source name. So there are unique. So one way to kind of get our head around the data is, let's just take a look at this data. What's in this column right here? So we can just paste that in here. And then if we take a look at it like this and come up to data and then remove duplicates. Here we go. So the pivot table is going to do this for us, but I thought I'd give you a preview or to kind of understand. So all the data, it pivots on these right here. So even though there was 1,185 rows of data, unique data, it's all based off of what relates to these 20 or so topics or sources of the data. So what we're interested in now is a couple of things that relate to this data. So everybody's going to have their own motivation for creating a pivot table, and so I highly doubt your pivot table is going to have anything to do with what analyzing cellular data levels. So you'll have to find your own motivation for why you want to create a pivot table. Mine is because I'm interested in the signal levels that relate to each one of these channels. So what I want to do is find the average level for each one of these channels. And there's two things that I'm interested in. Over here, there's a couple of columns that have that information. So there's a lot of information that came in with data that I'm not necessarily too concerned with. So that also the pivot table helps us kind of distill things down into just the information that we want. So getting started on creating the pivot table, let's go ahead and we will come over to insert, and then we're going to start with pivot table, and we can accept the default. What it's saying here is the range of data that it's taking in is everything on this page. That's fine, and that'll probably be the case for most users. There may be some advanced cases where you want to try to carve something out or something, but for the most part the default is fine here, and then wants to go ahead and open it up in a whole new worksheet, which is good. That's what we want as well. So we'll just accept the defaults and say OK. And then it's taking us to a blank page here, and it's got its field set up. So it's saying, hey, what do you want me to do now? I'm ready to work. And then you'll probably look at all these and you'll think, I have no idea. I thought you were going to do the work for me. But you have to have a little bit of knowledge, so that's what I can help you get started here. So in the columns, this is where our source name. So we'll pick that source name, and it goes. I'm sorry, not the column, the rows. And so it put it right here. So it basically right here, it did what we did when we did our sorting. So it just went through and filtered out and only gave us unique values here. And so the next thing we want to do is we're interested in the values, and remember how I had said that there were a couple of these values that I was interested in. So I know that what I'm interested in is the received power and the received quality. And so I will just put a check here and a check here, and it loads it in these values. So it's pretty smart to know what you want to do. So you don't really, once you get rolling, you can see it pretty much knows what you're thinking about. The problem is what it doesn't know is exactly what you want. So it's taking every one of those values and summing it together. So every one of these values in the received column, which is somewhere over here, it's just adding them all up. So that's not very helpful at all, because that's not what we want. What we want to do is find the average value of, I wanted to take, for, I don't know, it was probably 100 measurements that it took in different locations of this channel. Instead of adding all those measurements up, I want it to give me the average value. So that's easy enough to do. So we can come over here and say field value, and then let's just tell it to do the average. And there we go. It's giving us the average. And then we'll do the same thing here for the quality, and this, and average. And there you go. So this is a lot more helpful. So this helps me see what the average signal is across each one of these channels. Some of these are empty, probably because there wasn't any signal level that was measured, which is not not out of the ordinary, especially knowing where they were taking these levels. I think they had some pretty low signals, so maybe that some of these signals just weren't even getting into the building, especially looking at the frequency range here, 1900. So that gives us what we want. A couple other housekeeping things we may want to do is come over here. We don't need infinite decimal values, so let's go ahead and format these, and it's a number. 2 is fine, and then that. So now we have our values that we look for. The grand total really is not relevant. It doesn't, but I can't really figure out a way to get rid of it. But I guess from my point of view, it's not bad to see this. The grand, this is totaling everything up, and it's getting the average. So it's the average of all these. So this tells me just at a glance, it tells me across all the carriers that the level is pretty. The signal level is pretty low. 97 is not a very good level. So that tells me across all the carriers that there's probably an issue, and they'll need some supplemental communication equipment installed. So all in all, this is a pretty simple example of a pivot table, but it's a good introduction for anyone who's just kind of looking to get their feet wet. Next step is we'd like to do a little bit of formatting on this table, and so we can include it in a report. Which was the ultimate stated goal of this whole series, is we want to take this information and put it into a nice report that we can hand up to leadership and have them understand the problems, and quickly at a glance get the data that they need, and not have to sort through 1,100 rows of data and try to understand it. So that's what the goal is. So next thing we're going to do is do a little bit of formatting, and then look at creating a template. So if you do this often, a lot of this, if you create a template, it'll just load right in, and you won't have to do any work, and you'll have a nice, nicely formatted table with only just importing so you would just need to import this data, and then you would go to your pivot table. Pivot table would already be there. It would be formatted, and you wouldn't have to do any of this. So we'll look at that next.